Here's a thought. In this day and age, what does it take to make a true survival horror? Furthermore, a big-budget survival horror that appeals to the widest demographic. Well, I don't think we'll find the answer looking at something as tangled, misguided, and confused as Resident Evil Revelations. A game that was supposed to be a handheld spin-off to the Resident Evil series on the Nintendo 3DS, but Capcom thought it was just so damn good, they decided to release it again on all major consoles. So I bought it on Steam. When I finally played Resident Evil Revelations, I had a revelation. Survival horror is dead. That's all I have to say. Okay, perhaps that was a bit too harsh. Let's see, how can I start? When I first heard about Resident Evil Revelations, I was hyped. I couldn't believe it. They were actually going back to their roots. They were finally trying something new, finally doing something right. A horror game with scary monsters that might actually be able to scare me. After the disappointment of Resident Evil 6, the stupid blurby-derpy-derp rehash of Resident Evil 5, pointless re-releases, and all the crappy spin-offs on the Nintendo Wii, I was downright finished. And so too felt Resident Evil. Tired, if anything. Tired, embarrassed, and desperate. Resident Evil used to be a great series. It was the very first series of video games to be classified as survival horror, a newly invented genre many of us would come to love for its intriguing mechanics, mysterious environments, and its amazing ability to scare the living hell out of us. Resident Evil itself was scary. Stupid, but scary. A game full of fun, twisted ideas that were always implemented really well, with patience, passion, and care. And only after getting better and better with each succeeding release. 4 years ago, it suddenly started getting worse. Out of nowhere, Capcom just lost it with the series. They stopped making fun, scary games and started making stupid, desperate games. Rehashing the same crappy ideas, dreadfully weakening the atmosphere, adding in pointless, unwanted mechanics, and trying to appeal to a very convoluted multitude of demographics. Resident Evil 5 was a mess. Resident Evil 6 was even worse. Slaves to the dry voice of coldly calculated statistics. I was just about ready to leave this series behind. Forever. But then I heard about Resident Evil Revelations, a sort of spin-off in the vein of Code Veronica. And what's this, I thought? A survival horror game? Really? Finally? A game with atmosphere, exploration, a return to the formula of eerie creatures, cautious gameplay, cramped hallways, fearful navigation, and scattered lonely puzzles? Capcom was actually gonna do it. For once, they were gonna listen to their fans. For once, they were going to try something correct. I'd been waiting for this for a long time. I'd wanted another Resident Evil 4. I'd wanted another Resident Evil 1. And this just seemed to be a perfect mixture of everything I loved. So let's, dive into my revelationship with Revelations. Shall we?
Resident Evil Revelations.
Resident Evil Revelations is a game about Jill Valentine, and a boat, and a lot of stupid things. In fact, yes, let's just call this game Jill Valentine on a boat with her stupid things. Most of Resident Evil Revelations takes place on this abandoned ship called the Queen Zenobia. Now that's pretty cool. I like the idea of setting the game at sea. It's a pretty new twist on the formula that I wouldn't expect to work so easily. And god, it's beautiful, isn't it? For an HD port of a 3DS game, this is really sharp. The ship looks great. The water looks great. They've got the right foundation here. A scientifically tragic, haunting little setup, concealed by shadows in a very Resident Evil. If only the story were so kind. Jill Valentine and her partner, Parker, are looking for Chris Redfield, who went missing in the midst of a mission. this is about as interesting as the story ever gets, despite being one of the worst stories of any game Capcom has ever produced, if not the laziest of all time. I'm not even gonna talk about it. I'd rather talk about something interesting, like the monsters. Now, the monsters I really like. Most of them are grotesque, slimy-looking fish people. I really admire the oceanic theming of all the enemies in the game. Not only because I'm downright sick of zombies, but because these things are creative. Capcom tried something new here, and it worked. You've got big, fat, lurching globules of blubber, shell-faced mutants with organic crossbow arms, angry, flopping little fishies, and numerous variations of the monster from Amnesia. On top of all that, the ship this all takes place upon makes for a really fantastic setting. The ship is huge. It's dark and colorful, very reminiscent of the mansion from Resident Evil 1. The undersea hallways are deliciously frightening. The grand foyers are breathtakingly gorgeous. And, of course, the ship offers plenty of claustrophobic underwater segments as it slowly sinks into the murky abyss. All these great elements, the monsters, the setting, the colors, coupled with eerie fear tactics, exploration, and cautious survival, lead me to one very sad conclusion. You almost had it. Almost.
You were so close! So close!
Now what am I talking about? Let me explain. At first, it feels like the game is pacing itself, building tension. We get some eerie exploration through the abandoned corridors of the ship. We see traces of monstrous mutations, hints of creatures prowling about, and I start to feel a little tense. And then, about 10 minutes in, this happens.
They not only released a virus, but also several creatures known as bioorganic weapons.
Wait, what? What's going on? No. Are we really doing this? Are we really going to do this? Okay then. I guess we won't be on the ship anymore, will we? Nope. We're in a completely different setting, doing completely different things. 10 minutes in. Talk about building the atmosphere. Soon after this, I finished the first chapter of the game.
I guess this game's gonna be a pretty short ride.
Previously on Resident Evil Revelations.
We lost contact.
Wait,
with
what?
Jessica.
What? Excuse me, what?
It's time you learned the truth. Miss Valentine.
I am 20 minutes into the game. 20 minutes! Yes, I know what happened previously on Resident Evil Revelations, because the only way I'd reach this point in the game is by playing Resident Evil Revelations.
Previously on Resident Evil Revelations? This is not a TV show. This is a survival horror game.
Now, this recap thing is somewhat understandable. It was a handheld game, originally a 3DS exclusive. So if you're playing Resident Evil on the go, a quick recap might come in handy every so often. I can forgive that. But the thing is, this is a port. I didn't play Revelations until it was self-righteously re-released, and to be greeted with something so ridiculous, so utterly corny, I can't help but wonder, why Capcom? Why did you re-release this game? It's clearly very fast-paced, clearly not much of a long-form title, and I'm guessing it's going to be very short, and probably isn't worth the $50 that I paid for it. It turns out, only 50 to 60% of the game actually takes place on the ship. Each chapter is split into halves, one half taking place in eerie Resident Evil awesomeness, and the other half taking place somewhere else. All the somewhere else segments are, well, awful. They're entirely based on action, which, as always for Resident Evil, is a recipe for disaster. You'll be playing as Chris or Parker or someone else in a completely different place. You'll have a partner following you around, incessantly spitting out corny dialogue. And most of the game, especially in these segments, you'll be fighting a long, drawn-out horde of clones. Revelations. The same monsters, all coming after you over and over again, one after the next, spammed like pop-ups. This is a gameplay lengthening scheme, which I hate. Gameplay lengthening schemes rarely ever fool us. Like the overuse of CGI in big-budget action films, game developers seem to think that, hey, we can just copy and paste 1,000 enemies, keep the player spinning in circles for 15 minutes in the exact same place, and they'll never know the difference. Gamers can tell the difference between an original concept made with respect and passion, and a lazily thrown together element that gives nothing to the game but additional, drawn-out length. You know, these creatures, they used to be scary. They used to prowl dark corridors, hiding around every corner, waiting to jump out of nowhere, attack us when we least expected it. They used to be few in number, terrifyingly graceful when they would scarcely appear in the shadows. Now they're just stupid. Everything's stupid. Look at this. I don't need these putrid cutscenes every 5 minutes to ruin the immersion. I don't need this scripted sequence of events to make my gaming experience as tedious as it can possibly get. I don't need this annoying partner following me around, making stupid conversation with me every chance she gets.
So, Jill, was it?
Was what? Stay focused.
She was your partner before, right?
Yeah, my partner from before. What about it?
I was, just asking.
I should also mention, throughout 90% of the game, you have someone following you. And talking to you.
What's the deal with that guy in the gas mask? He's game.
Okay, let me explain why this doesn't work. Remember Resident Evil 2? Remember how lonely it was? How creepy, how hazy, cold, and foreboding it was? The reason the original games in this series were so frightening is because they were slow and lonesome. That's what made Resident Evil so great. Much like Silent Hill, it was praised for being different, for stylistically deviating from the typical action-based setup, focusing more on its creatures and atmosphere than on its action and scripting. Resident Evil knew that it sucked at script writing, so it kept script writing to a minimum. Most of the games were quiet, letting the player decide for themselves what to do. And this is where Resident Evil Revelations falls short. It's not a bad game. In fact, I dare say it's better than Resident Evil 6, and it has a lot more stylish leverage than Resident Evil 5. But just this one element, keeping a partner with us at all times, throwing a cutscene at us every 10 minutes throughout the game, and constantly cutting away to somewhere else, making us sit through dull, predictable, scripted segments every 20 or so minutes. These things take the fear away. They ruin game immersion, resulting in a shitty, forgettable game. Survival horror is and always has been a tricky genre. There's no right answer for a good survival horror game. It's a genre I love, and always have loved, because it's a genre that demands originality. Whether you're pointing and clicking, shooting at zombies, running for your life, searching for ghosts, hiding in a wardrobe, or solving Lovecraftian mysteries, survival horror is always variable and never easy to pull off. The problem with Resident Evil Revelations is that it can't decide whether it wants to be a survival horror or be an action-packed third-person shooter.
I wanted to like this game. I really did. Believe it or not, I was even planning to make this video before I played it. It was gonna be a positive thoughts video. I didn't realize the game was gonna suck.
The shallow waters of Revelations left me feeling incredibly underwhelmed. It's not a horrible game, it's just begrudgingly unremarkable. It did fix a lot of the problems with recent Resident Evil games. The inventory, the AI, the enemies, the theming, and I'd probably recommend it as a 3DS handheld game. But as a boxed console release? No. It's too short, too stupid, and its vision is completely unfocused. I truly like what Revelations was going for, and I hope to see the series continue pulling in this direction. But I can't shake the feeling that, once again, Capcom screwed it up by trying to make a game that appeals to everyone, resulting in a forgettable, lifeless dud.
I don't know about you, But I think it's about time developers stopped listening to focus groups and started listening to vision. And that's all.
Hey, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other two shows, Underneath Hidden Games and Underneath Fragments. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to see a lot more.